Hello and welcome to Macro Mondays, brought to you by David Gockstein. I'm your host, Landy, and today is June 1st, 2026, and we have Bitcoin hitting yet another target that we have been looking for since we talked about the potential loss of $74,000 and the primary daily zone that we were looking at overhead between 74 and 76 after Bitcoin broke into that area, which we had discussed after losing 78. And if 78 to 78.4 was lost, we were looking for that 74 to 76, anywhere below 74, especially on daily closes. I've been talking about the 70,000 to 70,500 on the bottom side to 72 to 72.2 on the top side here. And Bitcoin has played perfectly into that zone, got an initial move down after kind of front running the top side there at 72.5 or so, 72.3, and then retesting $74,000. We have yet another lower high in this downtrend right into this zone of interest. And this actually played out, well, pretty much exactly the way that I described on Friday. I had mentioned that you should be aware of if Bitcoin is teasing around the support side structure at the $72,000 area and we see a spike in oil prices, even if it's just lower term timeframes, expect a move into the zone. And we got it actually perfectly here. Wick right into the zone here. And now it's about, do we continue to see lower term time frame volatility in oil, which has been causing lower term time frame risk off rotations relative to the trend, right? Bitcoin is in a macro downtrend on the weekly time frame. In terms of the shorter term time frame uptrend on the weekly, still in a longer term time frame downtrend as it relates to, this uptrend that is on, coming from the daily that extended into the weekly with a higher low to higher high right into that monthly at 82.5 to $83,000. Now we've now seen quite a bit of this move given up right back to retest the tighter range bounce off of the lows at 60K with our zone down there at 58 to 60. We've seen now, that initial lower high that came in, top side get tested around that 70,000, in this case, 70,530 or so to 72.2 now filled out. You can just call it 70 to 72. And essentially, if we see yesterday's low dropped, then we're looking for the trend change off of the lows for the daily. So this was a higher low weekly. Down here at $65,000. The first high from 2021 is essentially what that was being bid off of. That created a higher low on the weekly time frame, led to the nice rally up into that monthly, and that was the last monthly higher low close open there at $82.5 to $83,000, depending on your chart. Here on spot price, it was at $82,534, and then a move right back down. So this, as I've said over and over again, is where the rubber hits the road for Bitcoin bulls. They need to see a trend change on the daily. And where would that occur? It would actually occur on any closes back above 74,156 now. So essentially this deviation swing high of this tighter range down here off the lows, this is what needs to be recovered on a closing basis to break the downtrend. Now, that's barring, continuation to the downside, in which case I would look right to this trend change off of the lows. So we had this lower low structure down here. We had a lower high and then a higher low trend reversal set up to higher highs. And where the defining criteria was for a trend change right here was around $68,000 to $69,000. To be exact, it was $68,221 to $69,285. So if we do see Bitcoin beginning to close below this $70,500 and $70,000, I'd look right to this area. If that is lost on a daily close, and I am talking about a daily close, then I would be looking at the low side of the structure being viable. Maybe not on the initial move down, although that is very, very much in play if that is lost, around $68,000. If we didn't see it right away on any closes below there, I would look at this entire bottom side structure all the way down to the lows and lower as being viable. So that means all the way down to 65 here to 62.5. Anywhere below there, we're looking 58 to 60, and then mid to low 50s from there. Potentially even roping in the upper $40,000 region at 48, which is 48,240, the big lower high from the prior cycle that kicked off the bear market there. But back to the upside to break the downtrend now, essentially recover 74, 156 here. That would break the downtrend. And then, if that were to occur, let's say, just speculating here, not, just illustrating, not even speculating. But let's say Bitcoin, got a nice bounce from in and around here. In order to, look for a setup, we would need to see a trend break and then a higher low, and then, go back and push onto the highs. Otherwise, we would be looking at the potential for a deviation if let's say if this was the low. Otherwise, we could potentially look for something like continuation down. And what bulls would want to see is, a move into this zone that doesn't really start closing below, and then a trend break, and then higher low, and work its way back up and start to present a trend reversal setup. The alternative for that would be, coming up, putting in another lower high, and then putting in a higher lower equal low, and then taking out that other lower high. But as it stands right now, the last lower high is at 74,156. So eyes on. This is where the bulls need to really hold up between here and realistically the save our shit level is around 68 to 69K on closes. And I'd be paying very close attention to this area and any kind of reaction. The initial reaction off of, around the 70,500 area, not bad, but also not that encouraging because it's still sticking within the top side of the swing structure and closing structures over here. In fact, closing right on this close open right here, and then even kind of rejecting that in the early parts of this session for Tuesday. Although today is Monday still, the Tuesday session is open. And I mentioned this last week, and I've been talking about this, whether it be on the breakdown with David or on stages over with Wolf Bitcoin or ATC. Really pay attention to oil. And we got the move that I speculated about last week, and that is, it's headed down. Even you'd want to see it continuing down. You'd want to see Bitcoin reclaiming and trying to break the trend to the upside, which was the last lower high was all the way up at $78,000 prior for Bitcoin. And if we did see a sharp move up in oil, which we got, then we're likely going to see Bitcoin, if it's at the top side of that 72, likely shoot into that 70,000, 70,500 to that 72 and kind of fill that area out and grab the liquidity from there. That's exactly what we saw. So now it's about, all right, if Bitcoin is going to hold up here, what I would like to see for the bulls, if this were the case for the bulls, is for this to kind of head back down. You'd want to see this when Bitcoin's in and around support, have it head back down. And it's pretty volatile and news driven in lower term timeframes right now. But what we have is a compression and a range here for oil. And we'll turn on the Bollinger Band set here. We are seeing initial expansion to the downside with those closes below the lower second. So if we do see any kind of rejection here that holds up and begins to turn around and head back to the downside, we can look right back to the lows around the $86 to $87 range by the lower second, down to 82 to 84 at this close here. Anywhere below there, we start looking, 76 to 79. You could call it 76 to 80, kind of a $4 range if you want to be a little bit more aggressive. But that's what you want to see. If we start seeing oil push back above 95 here towards the 98 to 102.5 zone here, in and around the basis and upper first, by this the initial sell-off close of the actual high up here at 119.5 to the higher high close, lower high swing here at 102.50. This would be the zone that you really don't want to see if you're in Bitcoin right now and cryptocurrencies. You don't want to see oil reclaiming above 95 and starting to push into that area. Likely that means Bitcoin is more than likely going to be headed down to test that 68 to 69 and possibly lower on this initial move. A little bit of sideways action might benefit Bitcoin at the supports here. See if the bid starts to catch up in Bitcoin. And again, the big thing to understand about this is why is there such a big disconnect between, Bitcoin and the stock market, right? Stock market's going full bull mode. It's getting frothy over there. Everybody's having fun. Everybody's dunking on the crypto guys right now about how the performance is lacking and all that kind of stuff. It's simply the structure, right? Bitcoin since 98K, putting in this lower high, right? We had the threat of a breakdown here with the lower low on the weekly, and then the initial move down to 80,500, and then the rejection at 98. And once this was locked in, we're in bear territory, right? Once we started to drop the 74,420 over here on the ride down to 60, we're in a bear market. This is a bear market. So it's bearish structure. It's continuation to now, a fairly volatile move down, right? So we had compression to expansion down, and then the move to get the retest here, which was the retest of the monthly over here at 82.5, right? So monthly retest. That is a bearish retest. And, the structure is bearish. This is a macro trend break, right? So we have the macro all-time high up here. And then we have the trend break structure. So breaking the uptrend here. This is a bear market, and this is a retest of entering that bear market after breaking down below the prior higher low. Now, it's all about, is this going to become a deviation of trend? And we see this base out here around the 60K region, or maybe even slightly under into the 58 or mid 50s, and then come right back up and try to resume, trend break back to the upside or something. Great. Realistically, probably looking for another leg down. That doesn't mean it has to happen, but that's more statistically likely. But we're living in the tale of two markets, right? Bitcoin's in a bear market, especially on the weekly time frame. And traditional markets stayed in a bull market. And that's exactly what we're seeing is continuation of the bull market. And the volatility has been corrective and hasn't broken macro structure. So when we start looking at Dow, there's no macro structure break here, right? So that's what we're looking at, a tale of two markets. One in a bear market where that oil volatility is killing it to the downside, stifling upside moves, killing it to the downside when it's moving up in those lower term timeframes on the way back down. And this was just a corrective move for something like Dow. For NASDAQ, same deal, right? Still corrective. So that's actually what you're looking at. And, when Bitcoin eventually does find a macro low, whether it be, trying to base around, which would take time if it was going to confirm 60K, which is not a macro low yet. It's not even close to being a macro low. Just because it set the monthly low doesn't mean that it's a macro low. But realistically, none of the structure was broken on any of these higher term timeframes. But for Bitcoin, it was. So it's just the tale of two markets right now. And I want to focus a little bit more on Bitcoin because of that. statement that I just made. And that does mean that, being on the further end out of the higher risk asset classes, I would say the furthest end out, when we see the volatility in oil back to the upside, if Bitcoin is, in a daily uptrend, then it's probably going to set some highs, local highs. When it's in a downtrend, it's probably going to push it down into those supports and even through them. So not that out of the ordinary to see. It's actually, and a lot of people making a big deal about it. It's not that out of the ordinary at all. So I really would be just cognizant of where Bitcoin is. I would keep an eye on oil. There's other factors that you can factor into this as well. You can look at the macroeconomics. You can look at inflationary data. You can look at all kinds of stuff. Oil is underpinning all of it right now. So I think if you really want to shortcut it, the easiest shortcut is to just look at oil headed up and look at it relative to where Bitcoin is. If it's headed up and Bitcoin's sitting at 70,500, and we're starting to see lower term timeframes get a boost in oil to the upside, I'd be looking below right to where this lower third is coming in on the daily. And that's, now right there at the, 68 and a half or so, almost down to the 68.2 here. You could just call it 68 to 69K here, where we saw this lower high, higher low trend reversal set up to trend break. And that's really what you want to pay attention to, is this area down below. And if we do start to see Bitcoin trade back above 72 to 72.2, then just keep an eye on that lower high at 74. If we do see Bitcoin approach that on the daily, what you're looking for a trend break is that 74,156 up here. Pretty simple stuff. We'll take a look at traditional markets. They've been doing pretty much what we've been talking about, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday for the past couple of weeks. I'll just quickly run through it with SPY here, and then we can just take a look at, NASDAQ and Dow on Wednesday for the check-in. But pretty simple stuff, taking it 5 points at a time. We got the 760 run. That's what we were looking for. Above the upper first, we got 755 above there. We're looking 760 above there. I would look 762 to 765 initially, and then up to 770. And right now, you can kind of keep an eye on this swing low at 748. So if you see 750 starting to get the tick on SPY, look to this low. If it's dropped, we're probably going to see, 740 to 745 pretty quickly around the basis, and then right back down into 730 to 735. I would still take it 5 points at a time. If we did get a more volatile move, though, I'd be looking, 740 being the area. If we started to see 748 dropped, I'd look to 740 pretty immediately thereafter, and then right back to the lows there, 730 to 735. That's where things get interesting, but realistically, I'd need to see a consolidation before really calling anything on the extremes back down to like the 720 to 725 region. I'd be looking for a bounce. If it got much further than that, I'd be looking for a more aggressive bounce and probably a buyback within the daily candle. Other than that, it's a grind up, sideways and up, right? So I'd be looking 762 to 765 to the upside. Above there, 770. And then to the downside, just watch 748. And then I'll talk about relative areas of interest for NASDAQ and Dow on Wednesday. But I wanted to thank you all for liking and sharing this stuff out there. Had a lot of good feedback and talk in group chats and stuff this past weekend about the longer video that I put out on Friday. If you didn't get a chance to watch it, I would encourage you to go back and do so. It's not going to be that much different from my take that I'm going to be giving from here on out when it's in regards to the monthly closes and the macro outlook. This Friday, I'll follow up with maybe a little bit longer one again, kind of discussing the monthly. I'm probably going to pull in some of the data that's coming out this week regarding some economic data that we're looking at. And we'll see, of course, where this week goes when it comes to oil's closing prices. More importantly, the closing prices, I think, are going to be something to watch pretty carefully through the rest of this week. And lower term time frame volatility, it's going to cause some lower term time frame corrections within traditional markets, but as long as the structure is, bullish and sideways and up, those are just lower term time frame corrections. For Bitcoin, we start seeing oil head up. Probably not great, as Bitcoin is sitting on supports and right near the edge of those supports. So you do want to see, if you're looking for upside price action in Bitcoin, you want to see some relief in the oil prices. And then we'll probably follow up later this week with gold and silver as well, as they're sitting around some key levels. So that's all I got for you today. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. With all of that being said, Landy out. Take care. Talk to you Wednesday.